Hello and welcome to another week of Talk of the Town, first to the Port Adelaide Premiership champion. G'day, Warren Tredrea.
G'day, Seb Costello. G'day, Sammy McClure. And boys, we're back again. Can you believe it? We're getting closer. We talked about smelling the dirt. I think we can smell a little bit of dirt and a little bit of grass. It's not far away.
I smelled a promotion on Monday night. Our very own Sammy McClure, the chief football reporter of the Nine Network, also hosting Footy Classified, Tredders. Did you see that?
Oh, I saw a big knife come into the back of Hutchie and he got him.
Just doing our part here, Seven Treaders. You know, when people are in need, we just put our head over the footy.
Is he being obtuse, Treaders?
Yeah, and our hand out. I think he missed that one as well. I wanted to pay.
Absolutely not. That was out of the goodness of my own heart.
Mine too.
It's all the better to have you right here on Talk of the Town, mate. So let's get straight into it. And, you know, you'll take us through what's happening in different jurisdictions. But ultimately, a whole lot hasn't moved. Despite big shifts in government policy, as it stands at the moment, AFL players can train in pairs and that's it pretty much, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to hearing from Treaders because it was even front page news here, Seb, in Melbourne, what was going on with South Australia and their border. So that's going to be significant for the competition. But we just still seem to be in a bit of a holding pattern. We're speaking early on a Wednesday afternoon that we're filming this. And as we speak, there are players going through a drive-through testing centre at Marvel Stadium, making sure that all players on every list and 24 staff that are nominated by each club are getting tested. Players are waiting to hear from the AFL Players Association this afternoon, my understanding is, about what the restrictions will be on players and staff once we return to train and then return to play, because they might be not absolutely quarantined away from everyone, but basically be told, go from home to club to train, back to home, back to playing, Treaders. So it's a moving feast still.
Well, I'm telling you, what you just said then is exactly what I've heard over here in South Australia, is that both Port Adelaide and the Crows would effectively make Alberton and West Lakes their training facilities, their training hub, so to speak. They're expected to really much stay at home, go and play, stay out of the community so there isn't a positive or a chance of a positive test. And every chance they've got, they're at their football club. So they're almost being hubbed away in their own lifestyle, if that makes any sense. So as you say, I think there'll be some angst from the players, but I think the players are finally realising, well, we've got to choose. Do we want to shut it down and go broke, or we want to get the game going? And to do that, we're going to have to give up a bit.
Okay, and Treaders, let's take us through this headline, and I want you to unpack it as much as you can. As Sammy says, front page of the Herald Sun today, the Deputy Chief Health Officer of South Australia writes to the AFL to say he has concerns about the detail around the protocols, and he also appears to say he won't be relaxing the mandatory 14-day quarantine for anybody who comes into his state, South Australia, which effectively means any plans for the AFL to run fly-in, fly-out matches as we would during a normal season would appear kaput. Is that the case? Is there some wiggle room? What's the word over there in South Australia?
Well, as of last night, Nine News ran this story and obviously gone round the country for everyone who's interested in AFL footy. The simple situation, it also affects both clubs. It's not like you can just fly in, fly out, even though the Premier, Stephen Marshall, did mention that he would look at such an option. For me, boys, we talk about the AFLPA the last few weeks, how they've been blown away in the PR space with the AFL. I think the AFL's been blown away here because I can tell you right now, the South Australian government hasn't been happy. SA Health put that statement out there because they want more content. They want more reasons. You know, I think in sheer numbers, South Australia went 2 weeks without a positive test, then got one, and then gone the last 4 or 5 days without it. They're saying, sure, we want to play AFL football and get our clubs involved, but not at the detriment to health in South Australia. And I think the bigger one here, boys, straight away is they're saying to the AFL, you don't tell us what to do, we'll tell you what to do. We want more information. Make no mistake, it's a bit of posturing, it's a bit of argy-bargy. It's going to come because the Premier even said, hey, if we get the information and we're happy with the plan, we will let a fly-in, fly-out situation go. But I just think there's a little bit of media posturing and really much saying to the AFL, don't tell us what to do, we'll do what we want to do.
Yeah, but hang on, Treaders, this is hypocrisy, isn't it? It was only a few days ago that apparently SA Health, who then handballed the problem onto SA Police, gave permission for 16 guys coming back from interstate to break any sort of quarantine laws that we have in this country or in the state of South Australia. And then all of a sudden we want to get the game going, which they tried to get the Adelaide Crows to do, and they're not letting it happen. I mean, if it's posturing, that's fine. But when you posture, try to be consistent with it, because this is just hypocrisy. Honest.
Well, I can understand your point of view. Well, it's fun we get to, and I don't want to get too far off track. Andrew Fagan said they had permission to train on the golf course.
Yep.
The chief of police said they didn't. So I think they need to get the house in order absolutely on that case. But on this fly-in, fly-out case, if they're not happy with the AFL's put up or they haven't put up enough information, and that's what I'm hearing, then the AFL need to step up. Because you'll get the South Australian border over quite easily, I think, because they're willing to work. But it looks like Western Australia is the big issue, because the last thing we want is both South Australian clubs and Western Australian clubs based in an interstate situation for a long period of time. I don't think that helps the players or the game.
You can understand the government wanting to see some detail, though, and if they haven't been given that, why should they risk people's lives? So I can see where they're coming from. Let's talk about the golf course issue, though. So 16 Adelaide players who were supposed to be quarantining at a Barossa Valley golf course apparently seen training in more than pairs, which is the current AFL regulation. There's a lot of speculation about whether they'd be facing a big fine, draft picks. In the end, it was a 6-game suspension for assistant coach Ben Hart and a 1-game suspension for each of the players involved. We'll flash up now some quotes from Ben Hart, because he appears to have taken most of the blame here. He says in a letter to Adelaide members, "I'd like to apologise for the part I played in breaching the AFL's training protocols, which are in place due to the coronavirus pandemic and subsequent postponement of the competition. I'm also accepting of the penalty handed down." He goes on to say, "I'm thankful the club was not sanctioned." Tredrea, some will categorise this as Ben Hart jumping on the grenade.
Well, it is. He's under a bus, on a grenade, fall guy, whatever you want to call it. And the fact of the matter is he was there. We don't know whether he took control of the training session and really dictated what they wanted to do, whether it was deliberate or not. I found it was quite a coincidence that a statement was written. It looked as if it was Ben Hart. It may well be, but the sceptic in me who works in the media and not a football club now sits there and goes, I reckon he put his name at the bottom of it. It was part of the deal as part of this settlement. It was all wrapped up nicely in a bow and delivered to everyone. But let's face it, I don't think we're ever going to find anything too much when we're still trying to open up the borders. I think it's convenient that not much was found.
What do you think, Sam? I mean, ultimately, this is a good result in terms of getting the game closer to where we need it, which is to have the ball bounced again mid-June.
Yeah, it is. Look, I've had a couple of days to sit on this now, and I've come to the conclusion that the AFL, I think, have more blood on its hands over this scenario. I'm really glad that the 16 players aren't going to miss any footy, because ultimately I think they're following the directions of their employer. I think the Adelaide Crows, I think you've got to pat them on the back for getting on the front foot once this broke. Andrew Fagan was everywhere. Adam Kelly, the new head of football, was everywhere. Matthew Nix did some in-depth interviews. They all put up their hand. They said, we got it wrong. I thought the PR from the Crows was fantastic. For the AFL to grizzle all week about if you stuff up, there's going to be huge penalties, and then when it actually came to it, hit them with a wet lettuce, I thought was really disappointing. Now, I know we're in a really sensitive area of the game and maybe a financial penalty wasn't the way to go, but there's no way you can tell me that the Adelaide Crows, having admitted to a mistake, a pending AFL investigation, then found that they could prove that mistake, and then they don't get sanctioned. It makes no sense to me, and it still doesn't sit well with me.
I also find it too interesting, and I know you said Adelaide jumped on the front foot, but they had to. They were caught with a stolen goods, so to speak. You know what I mean? It was the first time, and we know the last few years they've denied that hasn't worked. But in this case, they were caught out. And they were disappointed and probably really found out, didn't believe what had come about. So I think it's easy to own up when you're caught red-handed.
I'm with you, Sam. Going forward, the responsibility is going to fall immensely on the players if we do get footy going. It's going to be on the players to make sure they are going home from training, not going anywhere they shouldn't because of these pandemic restrictions or pandemic rules we'll have in place. I saw Greg Swan talking about the idea of a 10-game suspension for any player who breaks it. And the reason you give a 10-game suspension is basically so no one even thinks about breaking the protocols when they come through. This is a poor example to set when we really need to send a strong message that responsible players will get this competition moving forward.
Yeah, well, I agree. I feel bad for the next group of players. Let's hope we don't have another example. But the next group's going to cop the burden, the brunt of the massive penalties that the AFL hand down. That should have already happened. This was no accident. They may have said it was an honest mistake, but when you put 16 footballers next to an adjacent golf course with footballs and a coach, what do you think is going to happen? I find it highly bizarre that the AFL have handed down such a light sanction.
Now, mark my
words right now, this won't be the end of it. One player will stuff up, whether it's a catastrophic stuff up or a small stuff up. We're talking about 700 to 800 individuals who are, we're saying, going to have to go between training, playing and home and do nothing else. Good luck.
Totally. Let's stick with the protocols, because one of the things the AFL has said is it's just too risky for AFL-listed players to be part of secondary competitions going forward. Treaders, that obviously affects how the Adelaide clubs or the South Australian clubs work with the SANFL. So just unpack that for us. It looks like no AFL-listed players will be part of the SANFL, and just how big a deal is that?
Well, it is a big deal, probably for the Crows fans who follow their SANFL club. Generally, go with a Norwood or a Glenelg or someone else. They might also follow their Crows secondary team in the SANFL. But for Port Adelaide, the history, and it's quite ironic that yesterday was marked the 150th anniversary of the Port Adelaide Footy Club, 1870, where they were founded. And on that day, that the Magpies jersey, Guernsey, which was always been synonymous with Port Adelaide's success, particularly in the 70s and 80s and 60s, is not going to be playing in the SANFL. I think everyone understands why. The big question is, will they be back next year? Every indication Port Adelaide has said to me is they're hell-bent on that happening. But as we all know, football departments, particularly Port Adelaide, who's got debt, a significant debt, will take on more debt with COVID-19 associated season 2020. Everything will have to be signed off by the AFL. So I think anyone from the AFL is going to sign off about Port Adelaide not playing in the SANFL. I think, one, it'll damage the brand of the SANFL by not having a significant founding team in there, and two, it'll probably disintegrate the Port Adelaide membership base, so that they wouldn't be happy with it at all. But it's all going to come down to budgets and someone at City Hall ticking and crossing what's accepted.
The other big thing coming out of Port Adelaide, Sam, has been the greatest players of all time list that our very own Warren Tredrea is part of. You've cast your eyes over it. At the moment, we've been told, I think, 50 through to 11. What's taking your eye out of that particular list?
Oh, well, there's many headlines I'd like to run my eye over. One is that Tredders, I believe, is on the committee.
Yes.
Which is interesting.
Guilty, Your Honour. Guilty.
Yep. And have you been mentioned yet?
Oh, yes, I have.
What number did you come in at?
No, I can't tell you that, because what I will say is, myself, who's about one of 6 members, I got kicked out the room the other day. And
you're in the top 10 is what you're saying.
So I cannot disclose anything because I'm not being paid a cent, and all I'm doing is copying it on social media about who I picked and not. I know you're going to have some grief on who I picked right or wrong, but Gavin Wanganeen coming in at 12, people are questioning.
Warren, it's okay. And by the way, copying it on social media, welcome to my life for 5 minutes. What about the Corns brothers? How have you decided to go against the all-time games record holder of your football club, the multiple best and fairest winner, Kane, and you've picked Chad 4 spots ahead of him? Yeah.
What's the problem with that?
Well, I just think it's drastically unfair. Is there personal vendettas getting in the way here? Because, Corns...
With little wig Corns. The bloke whose hair doesn't move. No. Kane... Longevity gets Chad, absolutely. But I'm talking, and there was a criteria that we voted, and I won't bore you with the 5 pillars of our criteria, but it was all about, performance to elite. Kane is one of the best run-with players, 300-gamer, 4-time best and fairest, super consistent. But Chad, I think, was a match winner, and that was my opinion, and that also was adamant amongst the committee of 7 people who have gone from the early 50s to now, including Brian Cunningham, former CEO of the club, is that Chad slightly edged him out. This
doesn't sit well with me, Seb. People used to criticise Stephen Silvani for, he'd say he'd step out of the room when it came to picking his sons in the draft. But
all I said to him is, if I'm not in the top 10 of all time, I said, if I'm not in the top 3, don't waste my time. I'm not being involved. I did make top 3.
Yeah. That's all we're looking for. We got it. Get on it, boys. We got one.
Hey, you're part of the top 3 contributors on this show, Treaders. Don't worry.
Before I go, who was a better player? Kane or Chad?
Chad was better.
Oh, so sorry. You're arguing your own point. Costello.
I will straighten this up because it's time to...
No. I'm not playing the old political game here, mate. Who was a better player?
Okay. I would say that if you're talking about a run-with player or an influential, big, muscly centre-half back, I'm taking Chadwick ahead of Kane, yes.
Oh, so we're 3-0.
Yes. So, actually, your selection panel needs a pat on the back. That's right. All right, well, this isn't wasting anyone's time.
No.
This is the social club for this week. And look, we were overwhelmed with people submitting this as a nomination, to be honest. So we really need to take a look at this. It comes from Warren Tredrea's social media account a very fresh-looking set of wheels. Let's have a look at this.
Oh.
There you go.
Hang on. It's not on my rundown.
That is Warren, who a month ago criticised me for paying $4 for an oyster while at a restaurant before we were in lockdown. Add 5 more zeros onto that. And Warren, despite the fact that the world is capitulating, has gone and purchased himself a new German-made sports car. Unbelievable.
You know what's great about this, boys? I've been an Audi ambassador for 15 years with Solitaire Motors. They'll really appreciate this plug, and I pay for it. All I did was a wonderful thing and give them a nice little promotion. Which
there you go.
Beautiful association. I'll forward this. So hopefully I'll get another one soon.
Yeah, beautiful down there on Bel Air Road in Hawthorn near Scotch College in Adelaide. The Solitaire there, Treaders, they do a wonderful job, don't they?
Someone's done their homework.
Yes. Well, I tell you what you had there, the new Q5, 2,000 kilo towing capacity. That's to lug his paycheck away from this program there, Sammy.
No, I'm not putting my name to this. I'm not an Audi ambassador. Would you like to sign me up?
The Seb or Sam? No, definitely wasn't Sam.
Oh, dear. Well, Treaders is going to drive away in his Audi. Sam signed on with Footy Classified. I'm going to be the only one left next week. But Warren Tredrea, Premiership champion of Port Adelaide, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. And Kane Corns, I cannot believe you didn't vote him in.
Sammy McClure, once again, thank you.
Thanks, boys. See you next week.
See you next week on Talk of the Town.